I really thought I would like this game. I really did. Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Wild Serengeti from Bad Comet Games, a game of filming a nature documentary and trying to do so better than the various, well, other players at the table, while trying to arrange the various creatures, the various animals to specifically suit whatever goals you are going for in this nature documentary. That's the thematic aspect. Practically speaking and mechanically speaking, this is a game of arranging a variety of animals in specific patterns to most efficiently score better than the other players across 6 rounds of play. That's a more mechanical aspect to this game. And the game is basically worker placement across 6 rounds, worker placement with coins as you go ahead and you're mindful of the current board setup, of the various goals you're trying to go for. We'll come back to these in a second. And then you take actions on this board over here, placing your little camera, little meeples or whatnot on various spaces, paying in a coin in order to do the variety of actions you have over here. And those actions consist of a few things. You have actions that will put more animals onto the table, you have actions that will move animals on the table, you have actions that will swap animals on the table, and then you have actions that will gather you new gold cards. So over here there's a little tableau of gold cards, and some of the actions that you take from this tableau and or completely sweep and clear the tableau in order to gather more cards, because getting more cards is a core part of this game because it is how you're going to score for, well, everything. Everything in this game is going to come down to the cards. That's the high-level overview. Spend your coins as much as possible until you run out, or until you decide to stop. You can save 3 coins round to round, and then go ahead taking actions, trying to arrange more efficiently on this center board shared by everyone, arrange everything as efficiently as possible. Which brings us to these goal cards. Let's talk about these. These goal cards give you specific criteria that you're trying to achieve in order to accomplish the card. So for example, this card over here wants these 2 animals to be adjacent to that animal. This is an adjacency scene. And this animal has to be in that type of land, this animal has to be at that type of land, and then when you get this, you're going to get 2 food, and you get to draw a card from the scene deck. That's what the scene does. Other scenes are different things. This is a straight line scene. If the animals in a straight line in this order, they do not have to be adjacent. They could be spread out. So for example, if we look at the board over here, and we find this crocodile here, and this one over here, let's pretend this is over here, we could just go ahead and take an action, putting one of our cameras down on this spot over here, paying a coin, grabbing an elephant, putting it down over here, and ta-da, we now have, wait, no, that's not going to work, over here, boom, there we go, nope, that did it wrong, nope, this has to be in the middle, let's pretend this were over here, and this were over here, and then we go ahead and put this down here, then we can have over here, we have this animal here, and then we have the crocodile over here, and we have the elephant down here in the grasslands, and again, we get the reward. This is a good time to talk about some of the tokens you have in the game, because there's 2 primary tokens. There's coins, which are the resource you use to take actions, and then there's 2 other tokens that are the primary tokens you're going to be using for a variety of things. There's food, and then there's VFX tokens, the visual effects tokens. Food's going to allow you to move an animal before the scene. Normally you have to take a full action to move an animal, but if you spend a food, you can go ahead and move an animal one spot. So for example, I could have repositioned that elephant over there by spending a food. And then VFX will allow you, visual effects will allow you to give in a visual effects token in order to ignore the terrain type that the animal has to be on. Basically think of it as, you know, you want an elephant in the safari and your graphics guy will make sure that happens. But those are the 2 token types you have in the game. Past that, the game comes out to taking those actions every single turn. You're going to go ahead and take actions on the sideboard. The first 4 rows over here are simple spots where you can place down a token in order to put that type of animal onto the board. The rightmost spot is restricted to a 4-player game, so at 2 and 3 players, you're only using the left spot, which means at times you won't be able to grab a crocodile or an alligator because someone else's token is there. The good news is they have to move it next turn. They cannot stay in the same spot. The bad news is it means someone else can go there first. Then the bottom spots on the board, this one allows you to swap animal positions, not eligible in round 1. This one allows you to move animals 1 to 3 spaces, again, not eligible in round 1. The first 2 rounds, they kind of want you bringing more animals onto the board as opposed to manipulating the stuff. And then over here, we have taking a card from the scene pool and renewing the scene pool and taking a card. And in each of these, you can pay an extra coin per extra card you take. In general, in a general round, you're going to have between 6 and 7 coins, depending on if you held over or different things like that. But 6 to 7 coins, which means 6 to 7 actions per round, unless, of course, you decide to be a little inefficient, which you can do. There are spots over here that are always available where you can spend 2 coins to take a specific action, which, while not recommended, while not efficient, can be the right action at the right time, especially if it helps you score a scene card that you're worried you're not going to score. And that's the core action loop. You're going to do that for 6 rounds. Not a lot of things will change that up. You're going to have things like over here, you're going to have the specific arrangement over here. The first round, you can't take certain actions. Then the second round, third round, you keep getting your income. Rounds 4 and 6 will have a scoring criteria from a variety of scoring criteria that you can grab, generally rewarding you for certain types of animals that you have in your scene cards, in your completed scene cards, as well as the various animal icons we have in here, as well as animal icons you have on your scene cards as well. You're going to score points for that, and those can be chunks of points, especially in round 6. That can be a giant giant chunk of points for whoever was the most efficient at that particular animal competition. And then rounds 4, 5, and 6, you also have the Great Migration, which is a way of clearing the board slowly but surely. We're going to draw a card and then remove animals in those specific lit up spaces on that card, which will clear the board a bit, making sure to balance for all the stuff that's constantly coming into the board. You're going to have some things just wandering out once you hit rounds 4, 5, and 6. Past that, it comes down to scoring. You're going to score for the cards you achieve. Some cards over here are going to give you a very score. This one over here is a terrain scene. Usually you have those animals and those terrain types. Doesn't really matter adjacency or anything. You'll get 10 points for that one. Some cards will give you icons, which will count for different things, such as competitions. Lots of the bananas, these leaves over here, as well as another symbol, are going to give you things that give you a bunch of cascading points for having more and more of those symbol types. And then there's hearts, which will give you a scoring condition at the end of the game. If you look over here, you'll see you can get a ton of hearts over here, up to 50 points for a set for 10 hearts. And yes, you can go over and start a new set as well, continuing that process. And that's primarily everything going on in Wild Serengeti. Place animals, move animals, complete scene cards, get points for completing scene cards, get rewards for getting scene cards. Some of the rewards will give you ongoing income of visual effects and food tokens. So you won't just get them now, you'll get them as an ongoing basis every single round, and do so as efficiently as possible, more so than the other players, while grabbing scene cards. Small things we didn't touch upon, like things like in between rounds, you're going to get more cards automatically. There's some small little details we didn't touch upon, but that is basically Wild Serengeti from Bad Comet Games. Which brings us to review time, starting off with ease of play. Rulebook's pretty easy to understand, not a lot of complexities overall. I would say it's fairly well structured, fairly easy to get into, all of that. No complaints there. Game time's going to run a little long, I think, a little longer than intended, a little longer than the box says for sure. The box says, where does it say it? I don't recall where it says it, on the back of the box somewhere, but the game runs a little long. We'll talk about this more and things I don't like, but past that, table space isn't too bad, and game is easy to understand, teach, play, all of that. As far as player count, this is a 1 to 4 player game. I've played this at 2 and 3 players. I definitely prefer this one at 2, which again, we'll get into the whys and hows of things I like and don't like. Definitely prefer this one to 2. It's fine at both player counts. 3 was not that bad, but this game has a lot of stuff going on as far as the interaction between the way the board's constantly going to be changing, between the way players are going to mess things up and move things around the board and move animals and reposition stuff and take spots that you want. There's a lot of that going on here, and more players means more messing things up and less getting things done, just because of the very nature of operating in a shared environment, which is fine, but I prefer it more at 2 players because of that. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off the bat with the meeples and production. Production here is amazing, and in general, production does not make a game, but it's worth commenting on it when you have this level of chunky meeples for everything from any single elephant, from every single animal, from the little first player marker for the tree, from the giant little mountain they have over here set up, all that stuff. All of that stuff is excellent, really adds to the feel. The art's great, everything just looks amazing. The scene cards, maybe not so much. I think these look kind of okay, but I'm not really complaining. I'm just saying in comparison to the rest of the things, everything looks great here, solid production value, and the game's all about finding combinations of cards that work together. To me, that's the core puzzle of Wild Serengeti, trying to figure out, okay, great, well, right now, I think the best thing for me at the moment is to go ahead and grab one of these cards over here, because this card works well with what I'm trying to do, it cascades nicely off that, and therefore it'll help me out over there. That's pretty much the puzzle to me, the puzzle of trying to figure out the cards you have, and the cards available, when to grab new scene cards, when to sweep and grab other ones, and which things will work together so that within 1 or 2 actions you can accomplish multiple scene cards before players mess things up. It's about finding those commonalities, it's about finding those overlap, and seeing the patterns of the cards, and the game does give you that challenge. And the cascading benefits of cards as well, starting to line up a chunk of points over here, trying to line up various ongoing effects, getting a food token every single round, getting visual effects tokens every single round. They're getting all of that, and some of these points over here, some of these cards will give you lots of points for having lots of specific symbols over there, which seem a little bit not great at first, but as the game progresses, as you start completing 10, 15, 20 cards, those will really add up a lot and can give you chunks of points if you get the right cards that cascade nicely off of that. And then speaking of scoring, the competitions and endgame scoring add a ton as well. Getting a chunk of 50 points for your hearts at the end of the game, very rewarding, especially if you find yourself currently not winning the game. And similarly, these competitions over here, the Wildebeest, the Gazette, and these will all change game to game, but specific things that you're going for, stuff that you're trying to go for the entire game, stuff that you're trying to slowly work on, and then when you hit endgame, you're suddenly like, well, that's a chunk of points that I finally get a payoff on. Those are very satisfying moments in the game. As far as what I don't like in the game, first of all, it runs a bit too long. And again, I'm somebody that typically wants my games to run longer. I usually want that 1 extra round to get things done. This is a 6-round game that easily could have been 5, and I debate whether it could have been 4. Too much. The game runs too long. It's the same repetitive cycle again and again and again across 6 rounds of play. Even at 2 players, I think at 2 players I want it to be 5 rounds, and at 3 players I want it to be 4 rounds. There's a lot happening in this game, and you're doing a lot every single round, and while I like any extra actions, I think the game drags, although, and spoilers for my final thoughts, my opinion might be different if I enjoyed the game more. If I thought the game was better, I might not mind the 6 rounds, as it is I think it's a fine game, and so as a fine game, I think it runs longer than the experience I signed up for. Additionally, it just feels way too random. Not random in the sense of just random things happening, but random in the sense that players are constantly messing with you in this game. When you're doing things, any single thing you do, any goal you try to accomplish, you try to move this here, someone else moves that there, you try to move this over there, someone else moves that there, you're constantly readjusting, and it's not necessarily that players are intentionally trying to mess you over, it's that you have multiple people at the table trying to accomplish their own goals, and your goals don't necessarily align with one another, and especially if they're paying attention to your open tableau of cards of the things you're trying to achieve, then they might actually be intentionally trying to mess you over. In my games, I felt that it was more incidental messing each other over. You just have a lot of moving parts in the game, and I have 3 or 4 goal cards I'm working on, you have 3 or 4 goal cards you're working on, and the natural process of that means we're going to get in each other's way, and we're going to try to do things and just mess each other over. It's just going to happen a lot. And so the game ends up feeling this bit random of whether I got to accomplish a goal or not, or how things played out. It doesn't feel... It feels like there's a puzzle here that's supposed to be happening, but it almost feels like the puzzle should be happening on my own private board, because the tactical elements of working it on a public board don't feel rewarding or challenging. It just ends up feeling random. And speaking of which, you have a choice of between over-analyzing and just playing the game. I mentioned that you can see other players' cards, and you can try to plan around what they're trying to do, and you can try to think through, well, if I go here and I move this there, and if I go to that spot and I take that animal, and if I take these scene cards from the tableau before you get to them, because that one works really nicely with you, so maybe I just clear the tableau in order to grab a new scene card for myself. There's a lot of stuff you can do if you really are trying to mess people over, if you are trying to pay attention to everything, or even if you just focus on your own engine. The amount of over-analyzing, the amount of AP you could add to this game, if you want those perfect turns, can really drag this game down. This is a game where you kind of have to choose between playing versus playing perfectly, and playing perfectly I do not think is the way that you will have a better experience. I think it is the way that everyone at the table will have a worse experience. As far as what I can see others not liking, starting off the bat is similar to what I just said already. This is an AP prone game. This is an analysis paralysis prone game in which players are going to try to do their own thing as efficiently as possible, and players who are prone to AP, players who need that perfect turn, who take forever, this is not a game for them or the people they play with. This will run too long for those players. And secondly, is it can feel frustrating at times. It can feel frustrating. That whole aspect of players messing you over, of players taking your cards, all those things that happen in this game, if you're trying to work towards your own puzzle and it's not working out well, this is a game where it can feel frustrating. It is what it is. And so you have to be comfortable with that degree of annoyance in your otherwise perfect tableau building game of getting everything working perfectly, but in a shared environment instead. As far as final thoughts on Wild Serengeti, I mentioned at the beginning, but I really wanted to like this game. It looks gorgeous, which is a bias for it in the first place, but then more importantly, it feels like the kind of game I should love. I love these scoring engines. I love games where it's all about finding different scoring combinations and trying to figure things out that just work well, and I enjoy that puzzle, and I've enjoyed it in a lot of games, to the point that I have too many games that fall into that puzzle of just point scoring combinations, of trying to find efficient ways that everything works well together, and by all accounts, Wild Serengeti should fit into that category for me, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It feels random. It feels chaotic. It feels not elegant. It feels like there's a puzzle here that could have been a better game had it been different. But in its current form, it's fine. It's not bad, mind you. It's really not. Part of my disappointment here is based on my expectations for the game, is based on the fact that I really, really wanted to love this one, and I find myself thinking it's just passably okay. For me, this is a 3 out of 5. It's okay. It does the job. I did not enjoy my plays, but I'm certainly not interested in diving into this one continuously, not when I have other games that I can dive into instead. And speaking of other games, speaking of recommendations, first of all, if you just want something thematically similar to a degree, there's Endangered from Grand Gamers Guild. Great game, lots of fun solo and cooperative play. But if you're looking for games that are more similar mechanically, first of all, Cascadia is one of my favorite scoring games out there that gives you such an efficient, delightful scoring game. A little bit multiplayer solitaire. You're not operating on a shared board, but that is part of why I like Cascadia, because it lets you actually pursue your plans with interaction as players vie for different tiles, but not the kind of interaction that makes it feel frustrating, the kind of interaction that I enjoy. And if you're looking for something that feels a little bit more similar, that actually does a much better job of the shared board and environment, I really enjoy Ecos from John D. Clare from AEG. I find Ecos and the expansion as well, I find they both give you a similar feel of a shared environment that you're all working within, but a shared environment that I personally find significantly more compelling. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, have a good one.